Life cycle assessment. In this video, I will cover what is life cycle assessment, the different stages of the life cycle assessment and the impact on the environment of each stage. And finally, I will also cover a past paper exam question with answer. Life cycle assessment is a complete analysis of the impact of manufactured product on the environment. There are several stages for life cycle assessment. However, there are four main stages. The first one is the extraction and processing of the raw material, and the second stage is the production. Third stage is the consumption, and finally the disposal. At all of these stages, these four main stages, an LCA is likely to include information about the use of energy, the transport of the material, and the release of waste into the environment. So let's have a look at the four stages. Firstly, the raw material. All the raw material that we need will come from Earth's crust, atmosphere, or from ocean, and are all due to living organisms. Obtaining these materials has an impact on the environment. First of all, the use of raw material. If we are using finite resources, we can use up natural resources. Also, the use of the different resources and the mining can do damaging to the habitat. There is a release of pollution which can affect the environment during the extraction and during the getting the raw material. And finally, even extracting raw material can need a lot of energy and can use a lot of energy. And usually energy comes from crude oil, which is a finite resource as well. The second stage is the manufacturing, and the manufacturing has several impacts on the environment. First of all, the using up of land for factories, and then the use of machinery and people, and the release of air pollutants, and the use of energy, and finally the waste product and the disposal of the waste product. Third stage is the consumption, and the impact of a product on the environment will depend on the product itself. For example, the use of wooden chair would have much little impact because it doesn't need because it doesn't have much impact on the environment unless it needs repair. However, using something like cars will have a massive impact on the environment due to the release of pollutants. Finally, disposal. The disposal of the old product has an impact on the environment. So usually the disposal is through the use of landfill sites, and landfill sites will use land specifically for that purpose. And also there is a problem with the transport of the disposal waste into the landfill site because the vehicle that uses for the transport will use a lot of energy and will release a lot of pollutants into the atmosphere. Whether the product itself can be recycled or not will have an impact on the environment. And finally, some waste products are burned or incinerated, which releases a lot of waste, a lot of pollutants into the air. So let's have an example from a past exam paper where they need you to evaluate the use of glass for milk bottles compared to the use of polymers for the same purpose for milk bottles. Then when you have a look at the table they gave you, you need to evaluate the four stages. So let's start off with the raw material. You can find that the polymer uses crude oil, which is finite resource of raw material, while glass uses limestone sand and sodium carbonate, and these come from mining and that can pollute the environment as well. In addition, when you talk about raw material, you have to talk about the energy needed to process the raw material as well. So glass, very clear that glass uses much more energy than polymers. The second stage is the manufacturing. And in the manufacturing process, you can find that the energy needed for glass is much more than the one needed for the polymer. And because the mass of the bottles of glass is much higher than the mass of the polymer, then that means that for transport, glass is heavier and it will take much more energy to transport. The following stage, which is the use and the operation of the two different products, you can see that the glass can be used so many times, while polymer only used one. It cannot be reused. The reuse of the glass makes it very useful because it can conserve the natural resources. However, even when you reuse it, you have to wash it, and washing will use energy and will use water as well. And finally, there is the disposal method. So you can find that both glass and polymer bottles can be recycled. Both of them can be recycled. And recycling of both of them can conserve the finite resources, especially for polymers because they come from finite resources, which are the crude oil. Recycling as well is beneficial because it uses less energy because we need less energy for the production and for the raw material as well. And both of them can reduce the use of the landfill because we do not need to dispose them all the time, but we can recycle them. And finally, a final remark about the energy, that we need to refer to the fact that energy is derived from fossil fuel, and the use of fossil fuel will cause specific pollution to the air, and also it will use up a finite source of raw material. And finally, you can make a comment on the fact that in general, overall, the production of glass uses much more energy compared to the polymer.